Cowboy was found hanging from a tree, saved by a horse. What began as a rescue turned into a violent uprising. Gunmen were crushed by hooves and defiance, and from the ashes rose a village that refuses to kneel again. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. The scorching heat of the Arizona desert pressed down on Jake Harmon as he dangled upside down from the weathered oak tree, his ankle caught in a trap set by the ranch hands of Emmett Blackwood, the most powerful landowner in Copper Valley. Blood rushed to his head as he struggled to free himself, his fingers barely grazing the knife in his boot. After 3 attempts, the knife fell to the ground, landing just out of reach. The irony wasn't lost on him, a seasoned ranch hand outwitted by a simple snare. "This is what happens when you cross Blackwood," one of the men had sneered before they left him there, promising to return with their boss, who wanted to have a word with the troublesome cowboy who'd been helping local ranchers stand up to Blackwood's water rights claims. The sun beat down mercilessly as Jake's consciousness began to waver. The distant sound of hoofbeats registered faintly in his mind. Great, he thought, they're back sooner than expected. But as the sound grew closer, he realized it was just a single horse, and it was coming fast. Through blurred vision, Jake saw an enormous black stallion appear from beyond the ridge. The horse was unlike any he'd ever seen, powerful, with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in the situation with almost human understanding. The magnificent animal circled the tree, once, snorting and pawing at the ground before approaching Jake. "Easy there," Jake whispered, his throat parched. "I'm in a bit of a situation here, as you can see." The stallion nudged Jake's hanging form, causing him to swing slightly, then backed up and examined the branch where the rope was secured. To Jake's astonishment, the horse reared up on its hind legs and struck the branch with its front hooves. Once, twice, on the third powerful blow, the branch cracked. Jake crashed to the ground with a thud, the impact knocking what little breath he had left from his lungs. As he lay there, struggling to regain his senses, the sound of approaching riders filtered through the haze. The stallion nudged him insistently, as if urging him to get up. "They're coming back," Jake muttered, struggling to his feet and untangling the rope from his ankle. The horse lowered itself slightly, presenting its back. Without questioning this stroke of luck, Jake grabbed the stallion's mane and pulled himself onto its back, just as 5 riders appeared on the horizon. "Hey, stop right there," shouted the lead rider, but the black stallion was already in motion, powerful muscles bunching as it launched into a gallop that left Jake clinging desperately to its mane. The stallion seemed to know the terrain better than Jake ever could, weaving through narrow canyons and dry riverbeds, always staying just ahead of their pursuers. Eventually, the sound of hoofbeats faded behind them, but the horse didn't slow its pace until they reached a small stream, hidden in a grove of cottonwoods. Jake slid from the horse's back, his legs nearly buckling beneath him. He cupped his hands and drank deeply from the stream before turning to the stallion, which was watching him with those same intelligent eyes. "I don't know where you came from, friend, but you saved my life back there," Jake said, reaching out a tentative hand. The horse allowed the touch, its velvety nose pressing against Jake's palm. "I suppose I should call you something. How about Shadow?" The horse snorted, shaking its head. "No." Too obvious for a black horse, Jake managed a weak smile. "How about Midnight?" Another snort. "Storm, Thunder, you're certainly as powerful as either." The horse raised its head at the last suggestion, ears pricked forward. "Thunder it is, then." Jake nodded, wincing as his head throbbed from its time spent upside down. "Well, Thunder, I can't go back to town. Blackwood's men will be watching for me, and I can't put my friends at risk by seeking shelter with them." The stallion pawed at the ground, then turned and walked a few paces before looking back at Jake, clearly wanting him to follow. "You want me to come with you?" Jake asked incredulously. When the horse snorted and tossed its head, Jake shrugged. "Well, I don't have many options right now. Lead on, Thunder." For 3 days, they traveled through the backcountry, staying clear of roads and settlements. Jake found himself talking to the horse, as if it could understand every word, explaining how he'd become entangled with Emmett Blackwood, the cattle baron who was slowly squeezing out the small ranches of Copper Valley by damming up the streams that crossed his massive property, leaving downstream ranches with barely enough water for their cattle and crops. "I was just trying to help organize the smaller ranches," Jake told Thunder, as they rested in the shade of a rocky outcropping. "We were going to petition the territorial governor, maybe bring in some lawyers from Phoenix. Nothing illegal, nothing violent, but Blackwood doesn't like anyone challenging his authority." Thunder's ears flicked back and forth as if he was listening intently. "The crazy thing is, there's enough water for everyone if it was managed properly. But Blackwood doesn't care about that. It's all about control with him." Jake sighed, running a hand through his dust-covered hair. "And now I'm on the run, talking to a horse like he's my best friend." Thunder nudged Jake's shoulder gently. "You're right," Jake chuckled. "You are my best friend right now, and a smarter friend than most humans I know." As dusk fell on the third day, they crested a ridge and saw a small cabin nestled in a hidden valley below. Smoke rose from the chimney, indicating someone was home. "I don't know about this, Thunder," Jake murmured. "We don't know who's down." "There." The horse snorted and began picking his way down the rocky slope, leaving Jake little choice but to follow. As they approached the cabin, the door swung open and a woman stepped out, a rifle held casually but competently in her hands. "That's far enough," she called, her voice strong and clear in the evening air. "State your business." Jake raised his hands slowly. "Just a traveler looking for a place to rest. I mean no harm." The woman studied him for a long moment, her gaze shifting to Thunder. Something like recognition flashed in her eyes. "Where did you find that horse?" she asked, her voice suddenly tense. "I didn't," Jake replied honestly. "He found me." The woman lowered her rifle slightly. "Come into the light where I can see you better." Jake stepped forward, and the woman's eyes widened. A scar ran across her right cheek, but it did nothing to diminish her striking features. High, cheekbones, penetrating green eyes, and auburn hair pulled back in a practical braid. "You're running from Blackwood's men, aren't you?" she asked, though it sounded more like a statement than a question. Jake tensed. "How did you know?" The woman's mouth curved in a humorless smile. "Because everyone in these parts who looks as desperate as you do is running from Emmett Blackwood. And that horse," she nodded toward Thunder, "that horse has a habit of finding Blackwood's victims." She stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in, my name's Sarah Callahan, and it seems we have a common enemy." Jake stepped into the warmth of Sarah's cabin, his body aching from days on the run. The interior was simple but comfortable. A wooden table with chairs, a small kitchen area, bookshelves lined with well-worn volumes, and a stone fireplace where a pot of something savory bubbled. Thunder remained outside, but Sarah left the door ajar so the horse could peer in, which he did with obvious interest. "Sit," Sarah instructed, gesturing to the table as she ladled stew into a bowl. "You look half-starved." Jake didn't argue. He fell into the chair and devoured the stew with the hunger of a man who'd been surviving on wild berries and the few strips of jerky he'd had in his pocket when he was captured. "Thank you," he managed between mouthfuls. "This is the kindest welcome I've had in a while." Sarah sat across from him, her green eyes studying him intently. "That's not saying much if you've been dealing with Blackwood." "How do you know so much about Blackwood?" Jake asked, setting down his spoon. "And about Thunder?" Sarah's fingers traced the scar on her cheek unconsciously. "Emmett Blackwood and I have history. Bad history." She rose and moved to a small chest in the corner of the room. From it, she withdrew a folded document, which she placed on the table in front of Jake. 5 years ago, my family owned one of the most promising homesteads in the valley. We had water rights to a spring that never ran dry, even in the worst droughts. Blackwood wanted those rights. Her voice remained steady, but Jake could hear the pain underneath. "When my father refused to sell, things got difficult. Cattle disappeared, equipment broke mysteriously. Then one night our barn caught fire." Jake unfolded the document, a deed to a property named Callahan Springs. "We fought the fire all night. My face," she touched her scar. "A burning beam fell. The next day, Blackwood showed up with this deed, claiming he'd bought our land. Months earlier that my father had signed it over. The signature was forged, but the county recorder had already registered it. The sheriff was in Blackwood's pocket. We had nowhere to turn. "I'm sorry," Jake said. Softly. "My parents left for California. I stayed because this is my home." Her eyes hardened. "And because someone needs to stand against Blackwood." "And Thunder?" Jake prompted. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "That horse belonged to my brother Michael. He trained him from a colt. When we lost the ranch, Michael refused to leave Thunder behind. He went to confront Blackwood one last time." Her voice faltered. "Michael never came home. Thunder disappeared too. 3 months. Later the horse returned without my brother." Jake felt a chill despite the warmth of the cabin. "I'm sorry about your brother. Blackwood claimed Michael left town, but I never believed it. Michael wouldn't have abandoned Thunder. Or me." Sarah's gaze shifted to the horse, still watching, from the doorway. "Since then, Thunder has developed a habit of appearing whenever someone runs afoul of Blackwood. He brings them here like he brought you. How many others has he brought?" 7 so far. Each stayed until they were strong enough to move on. Sarah stood and refilled Jake's bowl. "Which brings me to you. What did you do to anger Blackwood?" Jake explained about the water rights dispute and his efforts to organize the smaller ranchers. Sarah listened intently. "You're braver than most, or more foolish." She glanced out the window at the darkening sky. "You can rest here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out your next steps." As night fell, Sarah made up a pallet for Jake near the fire. Thunder remained outside, grazing in the small meadow beside the cabin. Despite his exhaustion, Jake found sleep elusive, his mind racing with all he'd learned about Sarah and Blackwood. He was just drifting off when Thunder's loud whinny pierced the night. Jake bolted upright as Sarah emerged from behind a curtained alcove, already pulling on her boots. "They found us," she said grimly, grabbing her rifle. "Blackwood's men never give up a trail." Jake scrambled to his feet, adrenaline washing away his fatigue. "How many?" "Can't tell yet. Get your boots on." They slipped outside where Thunder was pawing anxiously at the ground, his ears pricked. Toward the ridge they had descended earlier. In the moonlight, Jake could make out moving figures, at least 4 men on horseback. "There's a back way out through the junipers," Sarah whispered, leading Jake and Thunder around the cabin. "If we can reach Whitman's Gulch, we might lose them in the maze of canyons." They moved swiftly through the darkness, Sarah navigating the terrain with the confidence of someone who knew every rock and crevice. Behind them, shouts erupted as Blackwood's men discovered the empty cabin. "They'll find our trail soon," Sarah said, her breath coming in quick bursts as they climbed a steep slope. "Thunder can carry us both. It's our only chance." The stallion seemed to understand, kneeling slightly to allow them to mount. With Jake in front and Sarah behind, Thunder carried them through the moonlit landscape, his powerful strides eating up the distance. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but didn't disappear entirely. Near dawn, they reached a high plateau overlooking a vast expanse of desert and mountains. Thunder finally slowed, his sides heaving with exertion. "We need to give him rest," Jake said, sliding from the horse's back and helping Sarah down. She nodded, scanning the horizon with worried eyes. "There's a place not far from here, an old friend who might shelter us, but it means entering Copper Springs. The town, that's risky. Blackwood practically owns it." "Not everyone there is in his pocket," Sarah replied, "and we can't keep running forever. Thunder needs proper food and water, so do we." Jake ran a hand along Thunder's sweaty neck. "I trust your judgment, and his." He nodded toward the horse. "He's gotten us this far." They rested until midday, then continued their journey, taking a circuitous route to avoid main trails. As the sun began to set, the small town of Copper Springs came into view, nestled in a valley below them. "We'll wait until dark," Sarah decided. "My friend Eleanor Winters runs the general store. Her husband was pushed out by Blackwood years ago, so she has no love for him." As night fell, they made their way cautiously into town, keeping to back alleys. The general store was dark, but a light burned in the living quarters above. Sarah led them to a rear entrance and knocked softly in a distinctive pattern. After a moment, The door cracked open to reveal an elderly woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She took in Sarah, Jake, and the massive black stallion with a quick glance. "Lord have mercy, Sarah Callahan," she whispered. "You've brought trouble. To my doorstep again, haven't you?" "Sorry, Eleanor," Sarah said with a wry smile. "We need shelter just for tonight." Eleanor's gaze lingered on Thunder. "Michael's horse," she murmured, a flash of sadness crossing her face. Then she straightened her shoulders. "Well, don't just stand there. Come in, the stables." "Through the side gate, quickly now." As Jake led Thunder toward the stable, the horse suddenly froze, ears forward, nostrils flaring. From the main street came the sound of approaching riders. "Blackwood's men," Sarah hissed. "They've sent word ahead." Eleanor grabbed Sarah's arm. "The cellar. Now. Both of you." She turned to Jake. "The horse, too, if you can get him through." "The door." Jake looked dubiously at the narrow doorway to Eleanor's storage cellar. "I don't think—" Thunder made the decision for them, squeezing through the doorway with surprising agility for such a large animal. Jake and Sarah followed, and Eleanor closed the door behind them just as the riders pulled up in front of the store. In the cramped darkness of the cellar, Jake could feel Thunder's warm breath on his neck as they listened to boots stomping on the porch above, and Eleanor's muffled voice claiming she hadn't seen any strangers. "Search the place," ordered a harsh male voice that made Sarah tense beside him. "On whose authority?" Eleanor demanded. "You have no right to barge into my store after hours." "On Mr. Blackwood's authority, which is the only authority that matters in Copper Springs." Heavy footsteps moved across the floor above them. Jake held his breath, his hand finding Sarah's in the darkness. Her fingers gripped his tightly as they waited, Thunder standing perfectly still beside them, seeming to understand the need for silence. The footsteps approached the cellar door, and a shaft of light appeared as it began to open. The cellar ductor creaked open wider, the beam of a lantern cutting through the darkness. Jake's muscles tensed, ready to spring forward if necessary. Beside him, Sarah barely breathed, her hand still gripping his tightly. Thunder remained unnaturally still, a shadow among shadows. "What's down there, old woman?" the harsh voice demanded. "Just preserves and dry goods," Eleanor replied calmly. "And plenty of spiders. Care to inspect them?" The man hesitated, the lantern wavering at the top of the stairs. Then a new voice called from the front of the store. "Doyle, riders spotted heading east toward Redemption Pass. Boss wants us to cut them off." The lantern withdrew, and the door swung shut. "You're lucky this time," Doyle growled at Eleanor. "But Blackwood knows you're sympathetic to his enemies. Watch yourself." Jake and Sarah remained frozen until the sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance. Only when Eleanor opened the cellar door again did they allow themselves to breathe. "Normally, that was too close," Eleanor said, ushering them up the stairs. Thunder followed, ducking his massive head to clear the doorway. "You can't stay here. They'll be back when they realize they're chasing ghosts." "You sent them on a false trail?" Sarah asked, a hint of admiration in her voice. Eleanor's weathered face broke into a sly smile. "I might have paid young Tim Jenkins to ride my old mare east at sunset. The boy's been wanting to earn extra money." "Thank you," Jake said sincerely. "You took a great risk for us." "Bah!" Eleanor waved away his gratitude. "I've been taking risks since before you were born, young man. Now both of you need food and rest before you move on." She eyed Thunder, who was examining a barrel of apples with great interest. "And your four-legged friend needs tending, too." While they ate a hasty meal in Eleanor's kitchen, the older woman shared what she knew about Blackwood's recent activities. "He's tightening his grip on the valley," she said, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. "The drought's given him leverage. By controlling the water, he controls everything. 3 more families sold out last month. Can't blame them. Without water, there's no life." "What about the territorial authorities?" Jake asked. "Surely someone higher up than the local sheriff could intervene." Eleanor and Sarah exchanged knowing glances. "Blackwood has friends in Phoenix," Eleanor explained. "Money speaks louder than justice in these parts." "There has to be something we can do," Jake insisted, frustration evident in his voice. Sarah studied him thoughtfully. "Maybe there is, not just for us, but for everyone Blackwood has wronged." She turned to Eleanor. What's happening with the Council Oak meeting? Eleanor's eyes widened. You're not thinking of going there? It's too dangerous, Sarah. Blackwood will have men watching. What's the Council Oak meeting? Jake asked. Every season, the independent ranchers and townspeople who oppose Blackwood gather at an old oak tree on neutral ground, Sarah explained. They discuss strategies, share resources. It's happening tomorrow night. And it might be your only chance to rally enough support to stand against Blackwood, Eleanor added, reluctantly. But if you're caught on the way, we won't be, Sarah said with determination. Not with Thunder guiding us. She looked at Jake. Are you with me? Jake considered his options. He could flee the territory, start fresh somewhere Blackwood couldn't reach him. It would be the sensible choice, but looking at Sarah's resolute expression, he found he couldn't bring himself to abandon her, or the cause they now shared. I'm with you, he said simply. They departed before dawn, with Eleanor providing supplies and directions to the Council Oak, a landmark Jake had heard whispered about but never seen. Thunder seemed to sense the importance of their mission, moving with silent purpose through the pre-dawn darkness. By midday, they had left Blackwood's usual hunting grounds behind, entering a region of steep canyons and mesa tops. Sarah led, the way confidently, occasionally consulting with Thunder as if the horse were a guide rather than a mount. How does he know where to go? Jake asked, as Thunder chose a nearly invisible path up a rocky slope. Sarah smiled mysteriously. Michael always said Thunder could smell water miles away. The Council Oak stands near a hidden spring, one of the few Blackwood hasn't managed to claim. As the sun began its descent, they crested a ridge and saw it in the distance, an enormous oak tree standing in solitary splendor on a plateau, its sprawling branches providing shade for what appeared to be a gathering of 20 or 30 people. We made it, Sarah breathed, relief evident in her voice. They approached cautiously, aware that even here Blackwood might have spies. A tall man with a silver-streaked beard stepped forward to meet them, his weathered face breaking into a smile when he recognized Sarah. Sarah Callahan, as I live and breathe, he said warmly, embracing her. We feared you wouldn't make it. His gaze shifted to Jake, then widened as he noticed Thunder. And Michael's horse. This is Jake Harmon, Sarah introduced. He's been organizing the ranchers in the Eastern Valley against Blackwood's water grab. Joshua Miller, the man, extended his hand to Jake. I've heard about your work, brave but dangerous. I'm learning just how dangerous, Jake replied, shaking the offered hand. Joshua led them to the gathering under the oak's spreading branches. Jake was surprised to see not just ranchers, but townspeople as well, shopkeepers, a schoolteacher, even a man wearing a deputy's badge from a neighboring county. Friends, Joshua called, bringing the murmuring crowd to attention. Sarah Callahan has joined us, and she's brought Jake Harmon from the Eastern Valley, along with some interesting news, I suspect. All eyes turned to them. Jake suddenly felt the weight of their expectations, their hope. These were people who had suffered under Blackwood's tyranny, perhaps even more than he had. I don't have news so much as a question, Jake began hesitantly. How long will we allow one man to control our lives through his monopoly on water? A murmur ran through the crowd. An older rancher called out, What choice do we have? He has the deeds, the dams, and the territorial authorities in his pocket. That's what he wants you to believe, Sarah stepped forward, her voice strong and clear in the evening air, that you have no choice but to submit or leave, but there's always another way. She proceeded to lay out what she'd learned about Blackwood's operations, how he diverted water using a system of dams on his property, how he forged deeds like her family's, how he intimidated those who stood against him. But his power depends on our fear and isolation, she concluded. Together we might find the strength he doesn't expect. The discussion continued as dusk fell. Some argued for legal challenges despite past failures. Others suggested more direct action, destroying Blackwood's dams to release the water. A few simply wanted to sell their land while they still could and move on. Through it all, Thunder stood at the edge of the gathering, watchful and alert. Occasionally his ears would prick forward, and he would stare intently into the gathering. Darkness beyond the plateau. Each time Jake would tense, expecting Blackwood's men to appear, but no one came. As the meeting progressed, Jake found himself drawn into the heart of the planning. His experience organizing the Eastern Valley ranchers provided valuable insights. Gradually, a strategy began to emerge. Not a single solution, but a coordinated effort on multiple fronts. "We need to document the water diversions," the school teacher suggested. "Create maps showing how the natural flow has been altered. And gather testimonies from everyone who's been cheated or threatened," added the deputy. "My sheriff might be in Blackwood's pocket, but I know lawmen in other counties who aren't." "Meanwhile, we prepare for direct action if necessary," said a burly blacksmith. "Not violence, but we can build our own irrigation systems, create catchments for rainwater." As the night deepened, Jake noticed Sarah had grown quiet. She stood slightly apart from the group, her gaze fixed on Thunder, who was now pawing anxiously at the ground. "Something's wrong," she whispered when Jake approached. "He senses something." Before Jake could respond, a young boy burst into the clearing, breathless with exertion. "Riders coming," he gasped. At least a dozen heavily armed. The gathering erupted in alarm. Parents grabbed children, elderly members were helped to their feet, supplies were hastily gathered. "How did they find us?" Joshua demanded, his face pale in the firelight. "Someone must have talked," the deputy said grimly, "or we were followed." "There's no time for blame," Jake cut in. "We need to disperse quickly in different directions. They can't follow everyone." As the group began to scatter, Sarah caught Jake's arm. "There's another way," she said urgently. "A cavern system beneath the plateau. My brother showed me years ago. It can hide everyone until Blackwood's men give up." "Lead the way," Jake nodded, then raised his voice to be heard above the panic. "Everyone, follow Sarah. There's shelter nearby." Thunder suddenly cantered to Sarah's side, nudging her shoulder as if confirming her plan. With the great horse leading the way, Sarah guided the group to a nearly invisible crevice in the rocky ground 100 yards from the council oak. One by one, the members of the gathering slipped into the darkness below, helped by Jake and Joshua. "The children first, then the elderly," Sarah directed, her calm authority bringing order to the chaos. "Move quickly, but carefully." As the last of the group disappeared into the cavern, the sound of approaching riders grew louder. Jake hesitated at the entrance, looking back toward the oak. "The supplies," he said, "and the documents we've gathered. If Blackwood's men find them, I'll get them." Sarah started to turn, but Jake caught her arm. "No, I'm faster. Get everyone deeper into the caves. I'll join you shortly." Before she could protest, Jake sprinted back toward the oak, gathering abandoned satchels and papers as he went. Behind him, Thunder whinnied in alarm, just as the first riders crested the ridge. Jake froze, caught in the open with nowhere to hide. The lead rider spotted him immediately, shouting and pointing. As the riders charged forward, Jake made a desperate dash toward the cavern entrance, clutching the precious documents to his chest. He would never outrun horses. The thunder of hooves grew louder behind him. Then suddenly, another sound joined. At the powerful stride of Thunder racing to intercept him, the black stallion swerved alongside Jake, slowing just enough for him to grab the flowing mane and swing himself onto the horse's back. With a burst of speed that left Blackwood's men cursing in the dust, Thunder carried Jake in a wide arc away from the cavern entrance, deliberately drawing attention from where Sarah and the others had hidden. "Good boy," Jake whispered, leaning low over the horse's neck as they raced across the plateau. "Now we just need to lose them and circle back." Thunder needed no guidance. He seemed to anticipate Jake's every thought, weaving through rocky outcroppings and leaping over fallen logs with supernatural agility. The pursuing riders fell further behind, their horses unable to match Thunder's speed and sure-footedness in the dark terrain. When they had opened a considerable lead, Thunder abruptly changed direction, doubling back through a series of switchbacks that would confuse their trail. An hour later, they returned to the now deserted council oak. Jake slid from Thunder's back, listening intently for any sound of pursuit. Hearing none, he approached the cavern entrance with the salvaged documents. "Sarah?" he called softly into the darkness. "It's Jake." For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response to Jake's call. Then Sarah emerged from the shadows of the cavern, relief washing over her face. "I thought they'd caught you," she whispered, helping him inside. "When Thunder came back without you." "Thunder came back?" Jake turned in confusion to where the black stallion stood silhouetted against the night sky. Sarah nodded. "About 20 minutes ago. He led me to the entrance, then disappeared again. I assumed—" They both looked at the horse with newfound wonder. Thunder nickered softly as if pleased with himself, then followed them into the cavern. Inside, the refugees from the Council Oak gathering had settled in a large underground chamber. Someone had lit lanterns, casting a warm glow over worried faces. Children slept on makeshift beds of blankets while adults spoke in hushed tones. "Did you get everything?" Joshua asked, approaching Jake. Jake handed over the satchels and papers. "Everything I could find. Blackwood's men were right behind me." "They're still out there," the deputy reported, returning from scouting the entrance. "At least 6 riders searching the area. They know we couldn't have gone far. The caves extend for miles," Sarah assured the group. "There are other exits. We can wait until dawn, then slip away in small groups." As the night wore on, Jake found himself drawn into planning sessions with the Corps, members of the Resistance. The more he learned about Blackwood's operations, the more convinced he became that the cattle barons' power could be broken if they were smart and united. "His main dam is here," Joshua pointed to a crude map spread on a flat rock. "It diverts water from 3 different streams that would naturally flow through a dozen small ranches. And he's building another here," added a rancher named Wilson, indicating another location. "If he completes it, my land and 3 others will be completely dry by summer." "What if we could prove that he's diverting public waterways?" Jake suggested. "The Territorial Water Rights Act of 1882 specifically prohibits any single landowner from restricting natural water flow to other properties." "We've tried legal challenges before," Joshua sighed. "His lawyers tie everything up in court for years." "But you've never had this," Jake said, pulling a folded document from his shirt pocket. The deed Sarah had shown him, the one with her father's forged signature. "Evidence of fraud. And I'm betting there are more forged deeds among those who lost their land to Blackwood." A spark of hope flickered in the faces around him. As the discussion continued, Sarah slipped away to check on the children. Jake found her later sitting apart from the others, Thunder's massive head resting in her lap as she stroked his mane absently. "You're thinking about your brother," Jake said softly, sitting beside her. Sarah nodded, her fingers still moving, through Thunder's mane. "Michael would have been right in the middle of this fight. He never could stand bullies." "What happened to him, Sarah?" "Really?" She was silent for so long Jake thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "The day after we lost our ranch, Michael took Thunder and rode to Blackwood's estate. He said he was going to get proof of the forgery, that Blackwood kept records of all his transactions, legitimate or otherwise, in his office." Her hand stilled on Thunder's neck. "That was the last time I saw him. 3 months later, Thunder returned alone, wild-eyed and skittish. He wouldn't let anyone near him except me." "You think Blackwood had something to do with Michael's disappearance?" Jake said. It wasn't a question. "I know he did, but I couldn't prove it. The sheriff wouldn't investigate. Eventually, I had to accept that Michael wasn't coming back." Tears glistened in her eyes, catching the lantern light. "But Thunder never accepted it. He started finding people who'd been hurt by Blackwood, leading them to me. It's like he's continuing Michael's fight in the only way he can." Jake reached out hesitantly, covering her hand with his. "We'll finish what Michael started, I promise." Dawn brought news that Blackwood's men had widened their search, moving away from the immediate area of the Council Oak. Joshua organized the refugees into small groups that would leave at intervals, taking different routes to safety. "What about you two?" he asked Jake and Sarah as the last group prepared to depart. Jake exchanged a glance with Sarah, seeing his own determination mirrored in her eyes. "We're not running anymore," he said. "It's time to take the fight to Blackwood." "That's suicide," Joshua protested. "He has too many men, too many resources." "He's also vulnerable right now," Sarah countered. "With so many of his men out searching for us, his ranch will be lightly guarded." "What are you planning?" Joshua asked warily. "Nothing violent," Jake assured him, "but we need evidence of his illegal activities, the forged deeds, records of the water diversions, anything that would stand up in court." "And we know where to find it," Sarah added. "In his office, just like Michael believed." Joshua looked from one determined face to the other, then sighed. "You're both crazy, but if anyone can pull this off—" He glanced at Thunder, who stood alert and ready, nearby. "That horse isn't natural, you know. The things he does, the way he understands. He's special," Sarah agreed with a faint smile. "And he has his own score to settle with Blackwood." After the last of the refugees had departed, Jake and Sarah prepared for their daring mission. Using the map from the planning session, they plotted a route to Blackwood's ranch that would avoid the main roads where his men might be patrolling. "We'll approach from the west, through Cedar Canyon," Jake suggested. "It's rough terrain, but Thunder can handle it." "There's a servant's entrance at the back of the main house," Sarah added. "The cook's daughter used to be a friend. If she still works there, she might help us get inside." As they emerged from the cavern into the bright morning sunlight, Jake felt a strange calm settle over him. Whatever happened, they were taking action instead of just reacting to Blackwood's moves. Thunder carried them swiftly across the rugged landscape, seeming to understand the importance of their mission. By midday, they had covered nearly 20 miles, stopping briefly at a small spring to rest and water the horse. "We should reach the ranch by dusk," Sarah calculated, shading her eyes to study the horizon. "Perfect timing, most of the hands will be at supper." Jake nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Sarah, if something goes wrong, if we're caught—" "Don't," she said firmly. "We'll succeed. We have to." The journey continued, the terrain growing increasingly familiar to Sarah as they neared her former home. Twice they spotted riders in the distance and took cover until the danger passed. Each time, Thunder remained unnaturally still and silent, as if he understood the need for stealth. As the sun began its descent, the imposing silhouette of Blackwood's ranch house came into view, a sprawling two-story structure surrounded by barns, corrals, and bunkhouses. From their vantage point on a ridge overlooking the property, Jake counted only 3 men visible outside. "Most of his force must still be searching for us," he observed. "This might actually work." They left, Thunder hidden in a grove of junipers, with instructions to wait for their return. The stallion seemed reluctant to let them go, but eventually settled, his dark eyes watching as they made their way down the slope on foot. Approaching the ranch from the west as planned, they used the lengthening shadows for cover. Sarah led them to a small door at the rear of the main house, where she knocked in a pattern similar to the one she'd used at Eleanor's store. After a tense moment, the door opened a crack, revealing a young woman with wary eyes that widened in recognition. "Sarah." "Callahan?" she whispered incredulously. "Lord above, they said you were dead." "Not yet, Lucy," Sarah replied with a grim smile. "We need to get inside, just for a few minutes." Lucy glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Mr. Blackwood's not here. He rode out with most of the men after that ruckus at Council Oak. But Frank's still here, and he's mean as a rattler when the boss is away." "We'll be quick and quiet," Jake promised. "No one will know we were here." Lucy hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Kitchen's empty right now. Everyone's in the dining room, but be careful. Frank's office is right across from the boss's, and he never leaves during meals." They slipped inside, moving silently through the kitchen and into a dimly lit hallway. Sarah pointed to a heavy oak door at the end. "Blackwood's office," she mouthed. As they crept forward, voices drifted from the dining room, rough laughter, and the clatter of utensils. A floorboard creaked beneath Jake's boot and they froze, holding their breath. But the noise from the dining room continued unabated. The office door was locked, but Sarah produced a thin wire from her pocket. "Michael taught me," she whispered, working it into the keyhole. After a moment of tense manipulation, the lock clicked open. Inside, Blackwood's office was a testament to his wealth and power. Expensive furniture, trophy heads mounted on the walls, a massive desk dominated the center of the room. Jake immediately began searching the desk drawers while Sarah examined a filing cabinet against the wall. "Look for anything with my family's name," she instructed softly. "Or anything about water rights." Jake found a ledger in the bottom drawer filled with meticulous records of land acquisitions. Flipping through it, his heart raced as he spotted familiar names, ranchers who had mysteriously decided to sell over the past 5 years. "Sarah," he whispered urgently. "This is it. He's documented everything. The actual prices paid, the inflated amounts recorded with the county." Sarah joined him, her eyes widening as she scanned the pages. "This proves the fraud. And look," she pointed to a notation beside her family's name. "Deed filed April 12th. Original acquired through alternate means." "Alternate means," Jake echoed. "That's how he refers to forgery." They continued searching, finding maps of the water diversions, letters from territorial officials that all but confirmed bribery, and most damning of all, a locked box containing blank deeds pre-signed by the county recorder. "We need to get all of this to the territorial capital," Jake said, gathering the most incriminating documents. "Bypass the local authorities entirely." A noise in the hallway froze them in place, heavy footsteps approaching the office door. Jake quickly extinguished the lamp they'd lit, plunging the room into darkness save for the faint moonlight through the window. The bay doorknob turned slowly. Jake and Sarah pressed themselves against the wall behind the door as it swung open. A tall, lean man, Frank presumably, stepped inside, pausing on the threshold as if sensing something amiss. Jake held his breath, the precious documents clutched to his chest. Beside him, Sarah was a statue, not even blinking as Frank's gaze swept the darkened office. After what seemed an eternity, Frank grunted and withdrew, closing the door behind him. His footsteps receded down the hallway. "That was too close," Jake breathed, his heart hammering. "We need to go. Now." They slipped, out the way they had come, thanking Lucy with promises to ensure her safety when Blackwood was brought to justice. Outside, the night had fully descended, providing cover for their escape across the grounds. They were halfway to the ridge, where Thunder waited when alarm bells began to ring from the ranch house. Lights flared in windows and shouts echoed behind them. "They've discovered the break-in," Jake gasped as they ran. "Hurry!" They reached the junipers to find Thunder already prancing anxiously, sensing their urgency. Without hesitation, they mounted, Sarah in front this time with the documents secured inside her jacket, Jake behind with his arms around her waist. Thunder needed no urging. He leapt forward with explosive power, racing away from the ranch as lanterns bobbed in pursuit. The night became a blur of shadows and starlight as the great horse carried them across terrain that would have been impassable for ordinary mounts. By dawn, they had put miles between themselves and Blackwood's men. Thunder finally slowed to a walk, his sides heaving with exertion, but his stride still strong. They had agreed to head for the territorial capital in Phoenix, where the evidence they carried would have the greatest impact. "We did it," Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder as she patted the satchel containing the documents. "After all these years, we finally have proof of what Blackwood's been doing. Your brother would be proud," Jake said softly. Sarah was silent for a moment. I think Michael found these same documents that night. That's why he never came back. Blackwood couldn't let him leave with that evidence." Jake tightened his arms around her. "Then we're finishing what he started, and this time Blackwood won't stop us." Their journey to Phoenix took 3 days, with Thunder somehow finding water and safe resting places along the way. Twice they spotted search parties in the distance, but each time Thunder led them to hiding places until the danger passed. On the 3rd day, the buildings of Phoenix appeared on the horizon, a growing town that represented law beyond Blackwood's reach. They rode directly to the territorial governor's office, their appearance causing a stir among the clerks and officials. Governor Ashford, a stern-faced man with penetrating eyes, listened to their story with increasing concern, examining the documents they had risked so much to obtain. "These allegations are extremely serious," he said finally. "If proven true, Mr. Blackwood will face not only the loss of his illegally obtained properties, but criminal charges as well." "They are true," Sarah said firmly. "Every word." The governor nodded slowly. "I believe you, Miss Callahan. Rumors about Blackwood's methods have reached my office before, but without evidence." He gestured to the documents spread across his desk. "Now we have what we need. I'll dispatch territorial marshals immediately to secure his property and arrest him." "The local sheriff won't cooperate," Jake warned. "He's in Blackwood's pocket." "The marshals don't answer to local sheriffs," Ashford replied with a thin smile. "They answer to me, and I've been waiting for a chance to clean up Copper Valley for some time." 3 weeks later, Jake and Sarah stood on the porch of her rebuilt cabin, watching as thunder grazed contentedly in the meadow. The transformation of Copper Valley was already underway. Blackwood had been arrested, his illegal dams dismantled, and the forged deeds invalidated. Families who had been forced out were returning to reclaim their land, including Sarah's parents, who were due to arrive from California any day. "I still can't believe it's over," Sarah said, leaning against the porch railing. "After all these years of fighting and running." Jake stepped closer, his hand finding hers. "Not over, just beginning. The valley has a chance to rebuild now, to become what it should have been all along, a place where everyone has fair access to the water, where no one man holds power over all the rest." "And what about you?" Sarah asked, turning to face him. "Will you reclaim your ranch in the Eastern Valley?" Jake looked out at Thunder, who had raised his head to watch them, those intelligent eyes seeming to assess the moment. "I think my future is here," Jake said softly. "If that's all right with you." Sarah's answer was in her eyes before it reached her lips. More than all right. As they sealed their agreement with a kiss, Thunder nickered softly in what sounded remarkably like approval. Whatever mysterious bond had brought the great horse into their lives had fundamentally changed the course of not just their futures, but the future of the entire valley. Later that evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint, the distant mountains, a figure appeared on the ridge, a rider on horseback silhouetted against the fading light. "Who's that?" Jake asked, tensing slightly. Even with Blackwood in custody, old habits of caution died hard. Sarah shaded her eyes, then gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "It can't be." The rider approached slowly, features becoming clearer in the golden light. He was thin, with a beard that hadn't been there 5 years ago, but the eyes that found Sarah's were unmistakable. "Michael?" she whispered, not daring to believe. Thunder's reaction removed any doubt. The great stallion raced across the meadow with a joyful whinny, circling the approaching rider, before prancing alongside him to the cabin. Michael Callahan slid from his horse, his legs buckling slightly, as if unaccustomed to solid ground. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I tried to come back sooner." She flew into his arms, tears streaming down her face. "Where were you? I thought—" "Blackwood caught me in his office that night," Michael explained, still, holding his sister tightly. "But he couldn't risk the attention an unexplained absence would bring. He sent me to his mining interests in Mexico, kept me working there under guard." His voice broke slightly. "When word came that he'd been arrested, the guards disappeared. I've been riding north ever since." Jake hung back, giving the siblings their moment of reunion, but Michael soon extended a hand to him. "The governor told me what you did," he said. "You and my sister. And Thunder." He looked at the black stallion with undisguised affection. Always knew that horse was special. As night fell fully, they moved inside the cabin, where Michael told his full story and learned of their dangerous mission to Blackwood's ranch. Outside, Thunder kept vigil, his powerful silhouette visible through the window whenever they looked out. In the weeks that followed, the Callahan Ranch was fully restored. The dams that had choked off their water supply were removed, allowing the natural flow to return to the land. Other families similarly displaced by Blackwood schemes returned to reclaim their properties, and Copper Valley began to heal from years of one man's tyranny. Jake and Sarah were married that autumn, beneath the spreading branches of the council oak, with Michael giving away the bride and Thunder standing sentinel nearby, adorned with a garland of wildflowers for the occasion. The ceremony was attended by all those who had gathered in the caves that fateful night, now friends and allies in the ongoing work of rebuilding their community. As winter gave way to spring, new growth appeared across the valley, both in the land and in the spirit of its people. The water flowed freely, shared equitably among all, sustaining life just as it had for generations, before Blackwood's greed had disrupted the natural order. And through it all, Thunder remained, no longer needed as a rescuer, but choosing to stay as a reminder of what courage and determination could accomplish against seemingly insurmountable odds. Some still whispered that he was more than just a horse, that he possessed wisdom and purpose beyond normal understanding. Jake and Sarah never confirmed nor denied these rumors, but they never forgot how a magnificent black stallion had brought them together and helped them change the course of an entire community's future. In the end, the legend of Thunder became intertwined with the story of Copper Valley's liberation, a tale of hope that would be passed down through generations, reminding all who heard it that justice, though sometimes delayed, would eventually find its way home, carried on the wings of courage and the hoofbeats of an extraordinary horse. Dear listeners, we hope that the tale of Jake, Sarah, and the magnificent Thunder has touched your hearts as deeply as it has ours. For those who love stories of courage, justice, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, we've prepared a special playlist of equally captivating narratives. You'll find it by clicking the link on the left side of your screen. If this journey through Copper Valley moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the triumphs of the human spirit and the extraordinary connections that shape our lives. Don't miss our upcoming content. More adventures await. We eagerly look forward to reading your thoughts and reactions in the comment section below.